This is lesson 15.1 arrays for the U of I's dual credit CS 112 class. So today we're going to be talking about arrays. We're going to really start getting kind of into the big thing whenever we're talking processing, and we're going to start seeing how this can be even more versatile and kind of stronger than other programs that we've seen before. So let's go ahead and run this bit of code right here. So this bit of code you're going to do in your, there we go, you're going to do in your processing thing. This is a program called Open Processing. I just had to switch over to it. So follow along. It works exactly the same as it does in regular processing. So whether you're using open processing or you're using processing, the results should be the same. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to clear all of this out because we don't need it. We're going to do an integer. We're going to do, I call them square brackets. I don't know if that's really the correct term for those, but that's the way this works. So we're going to go an integer with the brackets a equals a new integer 2 and integer square bracket b equals new integer 45, semicolon, and we're going to print and make a new line, array A has, and do a space and a quote, plus A dot length plus quotes space elements. And then we're going to have it, why did I do that? That was weird. Print ln array B has type plus B dot length plus elements. Oh, that's why it got all wonky, because I need to close that off. And then bracket, semicolon, and let's see what this does. So in this program, it has the console kind of appear kind of randomly on the screen, but here we have, it says array A has 2 elements and array B has 45 elements. And if you look at this code here on the left hand side, you'll see why that is. We'll see A has 2 and B has 45. And it's not that we said A is 2 and B is 45. What we're saying here is A has 2 things in it and B has 45 things in it. And so this is what an array is. An array is how many things, like, has a bunch of things in it. Uh, so So we have two different integer arrays. We printed the size of each one, and this that dot, the a dot length, is really where we start seeing things from Java and JavaScript in here. So we're going to start seeing things. Now you might be wondering why do we use this? Arrays are a convenient way to store data, especially if it's of the same type. And it's one or more elements that share the same name and data type. Maybe a way to think about this is if you're working in an Excel document or maybe Google Sheets or whatever, some kind of like data table. They're all going to be all of your X's. They're going to be all of your Y's. They're going to be all of your names. It's something that they're going to have consistent throughout the entire thing. Now, every element is identified by an index number. What that means is it has a place. It says, all right, this is the first thing, this is the second thing, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Like we always do, though, with processing, and the way that processing works is we actually start at 0. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one, for example, is if we had 5 things in the element, we'd have, and we called the element digits, so we have digits 0, zeros, ones, digits 2, digits 3, digits 4. We have 5 things, but we only go up to 4. Um, These can be anything. They can be Boolean statements, floats, strings, shapes, objects. They can be integers. They can be pretty much anything that we want them to be. The catch is that each array can only be one data type. So if you need more than one data type, then we need to use something else. We need to kind of figure out how that's going to work. But a lot of times, whenever you're thinking just kind of data science type stuff, you're going to have things that are similar. They're all going to be integers. They're all going to be floats. They're all going to be something. Um, we worked a little bit with arrays uh, whenever we built whenever we were working in Scratch. Uh, and one thing to kind of keep in mind is whenever you're creating an array, we don't want to make them over and over and over again. There can be a lot of data all at once. And so the statement on here is to prevent your program from just kind of bogging down, we want to declare arrays once. We should only have to declare arrays once. Um, so kind of ahead of time, plan out, all right, how long does my list need to be? Okay. So here we go. Here's some array setups. This is things that we need to do. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to be able to declare. We need to declare what the integer is, and we can give it a name, or not, sorry, not an integer, what the array is, and we give it a name. So in this case, we declared integer or the letter B to be an array, and we said this is going to be an array of integers. Uh, so we can also then create the array to say, then we say how many it should be. It shouldn't really be random. It shouldn't just be like all of the numbers. It's not really an option because it's going to set data aside. It's going to give it so much space and say, okay, this information is going to take up this much space. This is where we're going to give it. You can set things up individually. So whenever we start getting into kind of like what are these numbers, we can make them set up individually. So we can say, hey, at spot 0 it's going to be 5, and then spot 1 it's going to be 10. Or we can say it all the way through, and we use these curly brackets. And so what this does is same thing here. It creates the first one is at 5 and the second one is at 10. Another extremely powerful one, and one that you'll probably be most likely to use, is to declare it in a for loop. And that way you can kind of increment as you go, and you can kind of see that change as we're going. Okay. So here's an example of going individually. So if we had a list of years, so 1920, 1972, 1980, 1996, and 2010, we can store all of those individually. The first thing that I would notice is I have 5 things. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. I have 5 things that I want to store. Then what I can do is I first declare years to be it's going to be an array, and it's going to be an integer. It's going to be a whole number. Then I say years is going to be 5 long. For the first spot, I'm going to say 1920. For the second spot, 1972. Notice that we're always taking 1 off of where we actually are. So first spot is actually at 0. The second spot is at 1. So we go all the way up to years 4, and that's 2010. Or, because these aren't going up by the same amount each time, we could declare the array and set the elements right off the bat and say, okay, we're going to have an array called years, and they're going to be integers, and here are the 5. And you'll notice in this one, we don't actually have to say how many it is. This actually, it takes from this information and says, oh, we only need 5 spots. Okay. To increase each year by 7, we could use this program, or the same stuff that we've used before with that plus equals. So we're going to add 7 on to whatever year 0 is, and that's what year 0 is going to be. So, and then we can do that with 1, 2, 3, 4. An easier way would be to use a for loop. So for as long as this is happening, we're going to increase by this much. You could also use instead of 5. So what this does is it goes through and it runs through 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. instead of doing that, we could actually say year's length. And the reason that that's important is from then on, we'd be able to make changes up here, or really back here. We'd be able to make changes here, and this would automatically adjust, which is pretty awesome. Okay, so we're going to try a little bit of this. We're going to kind of mess with it a little bit, see how it works. So we want to make sure that we start off with an initial value. So let's go ahead and try this one. Let's clear this out. Okay, so we're going to have a float, and it's an array, and we're going to call that array profit. And profit is going to be a new, let me say float, because that's what we're making, and let's make it 10 long. Got a semicolon there. Then for an integer I, and then you said that's equal to 0, just because we're going to start from the beginning. And I is going to be less than profit dot length. Now, if you get into like true kind of programming type stuff, especially like in Java, you're going to see a lot of this dot syntax here. Anyway, we're going to do I++. That way it increases by 1 each time it runs through. Then do a curly bracket. And we're going to say profit for I equals 0. Then profit ln, or oops, not profit, print ln. And we're going to have it say my profit, oops, in element, and we're going to say I is profit I. Okay, and I got to close this off. I did that again. Oh, gosh, if I could remember to close a bracket, that'd probably be nice. There we go. So, if we run this, we see that it goes, my profit in element 0 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All the way through, it's 0. Now, I've talked about this before at least, in saying what you need to be able to do is first start off simple. Start off easy. Start off, hey, you know what? I'm going to have everything the same. Does it work? Because if it does work, what we're going to do is now we start adding in that randomness to it. So what we do is we change this. And let's change this 0 to be a random number between 0 and 7,000. And close that. Now if I rerun it, we have all of these numbers. And each element has a different number. They're not the same. They're not like it was in 0. Okay. All right. Let's look at this code real quick and see what's going on. Let's actually, even better, let's try and go run this. So, hopefully it does it on this program. If I run this, this one automatically adjusts. For some of us, what it should have done is it should have popped up with an error. And in that error, it's going to say that it doesn't, it actually result in this thing specifically, array index out of bounds exception 10. And so what that's basically saying is we went too far. We tried to call something that wasn't actually there. Like I said, here in open processing, it's not 100% perfect. It's because it is built to work on a web browser. But if you're is something that you need to pay attention, and that's the reason why that this profit.length statement is so much better to try and use and try and say, oh, I have 10 here, I'm going to do 10 here, because if that changes, let's say you lose one or you gain one, you're suddenly not going to address everything. And so in this case, it's a lot better to have that profit.length. Okay, so today what you're going to do is you're going to create an array called random num really, and I want it to store 300 elements, and use a for loop to initialize all of them so that then they're a number between 0 and 10. Print the element at the index number 251. Uh, Label the element so that I can tell. Take that number and double it. Print the new value of the element at 251 to the console. Use a loop to reset everything to 0, and print the value again in the console. Uh, so each time you print information for the array, you need to create a print statement that includes the information so that then I know what I'm looking at. So whenever I look at it, I should be able to go, okay, I'm looking at the value of element 251. I'm looking at the value of 251 doubled. I'm looking at the value when it's reset. So it should have at least those three things in the console. So it should look something, not exactly, like this. The reason that it shouldn't look exactly like this is this number right here should be random. And then this number should be double of this. And so maybe, check and make sure that it's working right. And then put what the new value is. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Shoot me a message, let me know. But beyond that, have a good time and happy coding.